If I'm going to be open about my story, I want it to mean something. You know, I think people are really looking outside of those traditional forms of recovery to find what's going to work for them. It's like when they were in university doing high-level sports, I was on the streets doing dope. Like, I've had a lot of friends do the world champs this year, and we're like, it is way different. It's like a gravel crit. If you don't get in the right move, your race is done. You know, you get a top 20 at a certain gravel event, that's better than winning a Cat 1 or 2 road race. I think the more calm you stay, the quicker you can get it done. These gravel events and gravel in general is the views and the places that it takes you is incredible. When you sign up, start eating now.
Who's Owen Vermeulen?
Well, Owen Vermeulen.
Vermeulen. I need to get that right. Hey?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, a guy, like, I don't know, my focus my whole life was skateboarding, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously, like, life took a turn and things went awry for a long time. And yeah, so, you know, like, I've felt like I've gone through a few different lives, you know, and now I'm kind of on this third one with cycling. And, you know, and that's kind of who I am now. It's just like, I like to think that, not that cycling encompasses who I am, but...
No, but it's a vehicle. It's a part of your journey, right?
And yeah, so I feel pretty grateful that I'm kind of on this, like, you know, like a cat with 9 lives. Like now I'm on, I don't know how many now, but yeah.
So you battled addiction. Mm-hmm. You went through that phase. You can check out Owen's video online right now, all about that journey. But I really want to get into who you are, Owen, but also what cycling not only means to you, but what the environment around cycling and being a pro gravel racer is all about. So, like, I really want to get into how you mentally prep as a gravel racer. What's the big difference between this kind of racing and road racing? Why has it attracted you?
Well, I think the number one thing was the community, right? Like, like I raced on the road for years, right? Like I haven't done a road race in a while, but you know, like I didn't tell anybody about my story. Like I hid my addiction and like I kind of sugar-coated it. If it came up, like I kind of sugar-coated it a bit.
What was the reason why, Owen?
I think I was just intimidated and I kind of had that like imposter syndrome. You know, it's like
everyone else is like perfect human beings counting their macros
and it's
like
you know, they're coming from like, you know, especially when I got into the higher categories on the road, it was like it felt like I always would just go to these road races like the spring series here.
Yeah.
And like the spring series here in BC, it was like, you know, years ago there was a lot of races, right? Mm-hmm. Like you could potentially get a good 20 to 24 races in before provincials.
Yeah.
If you did every race every weekend. And so like I always just kind of saw these teams as kind of clickies, like they were kind of click, and I just like it was nothing against them. It was more my like, oh, that's a click, like they're not going to be welcoming. And it was just more in my head. Like, obviously, all these people I know, I can consider them friends now, fair. And they're great.
Yeah.
But it was more in my head, like, oh, like just knowing what I had been through in my life, I was like, oh, it just felt like intimidating. So I would go to these road races, you know what I mean? I would ride as a solo, not a team member. I'd just like go and race and then go home.
And how hard was it at that time, Owen?
What's that?
How hard was it at that time, Owen? You weren't getting like results yet? Or?
No, like, well, I think the first Cat 4 race I did, I won by like 3 minutes, but I didn't know how to race. I just went full gas right from the gun and just like raced my ass off. Like didn't have any idea how to like road race or anything. And
but
just
that's amazing.
Rode
right?
really hard in like a solo breakaway and like won. And like, yeah, that was back in like 2014 or 15 or something like that.
Okay.
And then I just started kind of getting to know a couple people here and there, and you know, then I started watching more cycling, and you know, then I was like, okay, well, I still don't have a team. Not that I wanted one at the time. I just wanted to try to just go out there, and it was more of just like kind of ticking off these little mental goals for myself of like, okay, I just want to see, and then you know, I'd go to Cat 3, then Cat 2, and Cat 1, like that kind of thing was like and then I saw that progression, and you know, I was on a couple of teams here and there with like Jukebox and then Hugh Dog and stuff like that, and it was great. And I really appreciated all of that. But I think I still wasn't open about my history because, yeah, like the guys that I was racing at that higher level in the Cat 1-2s, it's like you see the guys that are coming from university sports, like, they're like coming from a high level rowers or they're high level runners. And
Yeah.
it's like when they were in university doing high level sports, I was on the streets doing dope. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like, so it was totally different background. So in my head, I was like, I don't know how I can relate to these guys besides cycling, besides racing a bike. But, like that was just nonsense in my head. It's like all these people are great and they're welcoming. And it was those personal blockades for me. Like it wasn't anything to do with them.
When did it shift, Owen? Or did it ever shift where you could, kind of say, you know what, they're on my team as well and like progressing as an athlete and being part of a community? And...
Yeah, I think it was just more like to be good, you got to get out there all the time, right? Like you're out there for hours and hours, and it's like I rode solo, and I still do. I rode solo so much, but then, like hooking up with the guys like with Jukebox back in the day too, it was like, we went out a lot together, right? And there's a couple guys on the team specifically that like we would go out together all the time. And then that kind of just like made me a lot more comfortable around the road racing scene, and then I got to know a lot more people. And
then when was the moment shift into gravel?
Well, I started like doing these, and I'm getting older, right? So it's like the road racing was getting a lot punchier, right? Like, like I couldn't pump out 1200 watts 10 times in a row anymore. You know what I mean? Like I had that diesel engine and I had the engine, and like, so I had to really pick and choose my races and, getting breakaways and find the right race. And that was I wasn't losing my enthusiasm for it, but then I just I went out on these gravel rides, and I went on this 280 kilometer massive gravel ride at Tootie back in 2019 or something. And I was just like, this is insane. Like, this is what I really love. Like, just a long, hard day on the saddle. And I was like, this is awesome. And gravel racing was not really huge in Canada yet. Like, there was there was the Burnt Bridge Fondo, and there was the Triple Crown of Gravel. Like, there was those gravel fondos, but, it was still Dirty Kanza before it was Unbound. Like, there was so we were still seeing a lot of these, but, and then the privateer thing was happening, right? Like, some of the guys Pete Stetina went from the World Tour into his whole privateer thing, and that was going on. And so, gravel racing was really actually beginning to be an option for people, where it wasn't just something people did on the side of their, road program.
No, it's wild as a discipline, right? 5 years, basically. It went from exactly what you're saying, privateers, almost like contracted athletes who would go to these events, do super well, and you'd read it in magazines, or you'd see it in media, and that was kind of it, right? There's no UCI sanctioning it. We just kind of all accepted that you'd go to Unbound, and whoever won Unbound was the Gravel King of the Year. And now
that was the world champs,
or I should say Dirty Kanza at that time, right?
Yeah. That was the world champs, essentially.
So it must be weird to see now the UCI put its claws in it and see how they interpret it in a certain sense.
It's very Eurocentric. Right?
As it would be, everything the UCI does.
I think it's really good, for gravel, but the racing is completely different. Right?
Yeah.
I obviously haven't done a UCI World Champs gravel race. I'd like to try to get to this year or maybe next year, but it's I've had a lot of friends do the World Champs this year, and we're it is way different. It's like a gravel crit almost. Guys are just all out, and
they would be, right? The distance is
for
80
them,
to 100K.
For them it's not long at all, right? And I think for me it's the North American gravel scene is based upon races like BWR California and Unbound, right? Those were the two huge ones, in Steamboat and Leadville.
Yeah.
Those are these ultra efforts, 1 day efforts, right? they're long and they're strenuous, and that was kind of what really brought me into the gravel scene, like, and what I was like, okay, now this is what I really want to focus on, because I liked the fact that it was 6 to 9 hours long, right? I liked the fact
You
that
can
these
come
events
back
were.
in a gravel race.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, you cannot say that about road racing.
No, like
You can't be at the side of the road 15 minutes
No.
fixing something, and then somehow 3 hours later
Or-
you catch that group back in.
even in a road race, it's like you don't, like, besides flatting and stuff like that, if you don't get in the right move, your race is done.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you don't make the break, if you're a breakaway rider, you don't make the break, or, you missed the right move, you're like, okay, my race is done. You know what I mean? And maybe I'll help a teammate for the rest of the race, but, my race is done. And it can be done just in a matter of 1 or 2 moves, right? And yeah, like with gravel, it's like, I've come back a couple times. Like, I've had some bad starts, or I've had a mechanical at the beginning. And it's like, you just put your head down and go. And it's amazing how many guys crack after like 3-4 hours.
That's
and then
the
you're able
joy
to
of gravel.
pass, right? And it's like, so I think it's trying to find that happy medium of like, okay, I need road legs for a gravel distance, right? And trying to pick and choose when you're going to, fire off those bullets, and like, how am I going to balance my nutrition? How am I going to balance this distance? How am I going to balance my effort? So I actually can get to the finish in, or
Yeah.
have some juice for the final climbs or something like that.
I love that point though, and because like I get a question from, I would say, laymen sometimes. Oh, Jam, like you're never gonna win a gravel race, but you might win a crit. You might win a road race. Like, why do you put so much effort in something that you're gonna, like, your best result ever in your lifetime, maybe 20th place at BWR? And I think because for me personally, I want your thoughts on this. It's a more fulsome experience of cycling. It's like you go through all the emotions. You go through darkness. You will. In a 200K gravel event, no matter how fit you are, in my assessment, maybe Rob Britton doesn't agree with me, but like, you'll go through a dark time where you're like, I can't keep this
Everybody
pace
goes through
in.
dark. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. The nutrition, the mechanical. Oh my God, I have to keep my bike intact for 212 kilometers. What are your thoughts on that? People who say like, you're never gonna win it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing though, is like, you get a top 20 at a certain gravel event.
Yeah.
That's better than winning a Cat 1-2 road race.
No,
right?
totally.
You know what I mean? Like, it's, for me, it's like like when I raced Unbound, it's like, I was like, okay, like I'm looking at, you're seeing, like when I did Unbound, it was like 223 registered pros, and you got a field of like, over 2,000 people, and it's like, okay, if I can get a top 200, that's sick, right? And then I pop in the top 100, and like, you move your way up, and you're like, okay, like now next year I want to get in the top 50, or, you know what I mean? And so like those, I think for me, it's like those kind of, it might not be anywhere near a podium at these big events, but like a top 50 at Unbound is huge in comparison to, like winning a local Cat 1-2 road race. Like, but it depends on what your focus is. Like, that's, for me, that's my focus, right? So that might mean more to me than winning a Cat 1-2 road race. But for a road racer on a road team, winning a Cat 1-2 road race versus a top 50, so it really depends on where your focus and who your supports are, right? Like, so if you're supported for that domestic road scene and you win a Cat 1-2 race, that is huge, because there's a lot of fast Cat 1-2 guys, so that is a great result. But they're you can't really compare the two, almost, just because they're different, right? Like,
no, totally.
So,
I think that just the conversation happens so often, right?
And I think like you said, everybody goes through those dark times, and it is a wholesome experience. And I think that's what brought me to the fact, like, when I first did Unbound, it was like, you're making these crazy connections out with these fellow racers, right? Like, I felt like with me, it was like when I was in a break in, a road race, it's like, this guy is my enemy at the moment. You know what I mean? But you're 180K in a gravel race, and you're in with a small group, and you're like, this is my friend right now. Like, and you're going through that experience in those dark times together, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of bond like that you create, like especially like at Unbound when I was with like Isabel King there for a while or whatever, is like you get these bonds that are created through this massive experience, and you end up at the like best friends with the guy you just raced with for 6 hours. You know what I mean?
I love it. Yeah, I have the
And
same
that's,
experience
like,
at BWR like
yeah,
that, right? They're your
yeah,
like ride or die for the day.
yeah,
They need to pull as much as you need to pull, and you're gonna
yeah,
make it to the end. And you have those guys, right? The
yeah,
whole event.
yeah.
You're with them.
So that's where I think for me that community was so much. It drove me to that way more, because on the road it's like, yeah, you just kind of disappear and you go in your respective cars and drive home.
Yep.
And
That's a good way of putting it. You go to your respective cars, you go home.
Yeah. And then, but gravel, it's like, you've created those epic experiences together. So you want to celebrate that a little bit before everybody goes in their respective cars and goes home.
Okay, I want to switch gears. Who supported you last season? What was it like? I know it was Opicure, but let's get into it. I want to really understand how this team runs, because it's different.
Yeah, it's great, man. Like, I have so much respect for those guys, and I have so much gratitude for them. Mm-hmm. And I think they were a very huge catalyst in me being open about my story. So, I had told some people. I wasn't like fully open about my story until I connected with those guys, and it was like, I had told some close friends and people I had raced with on the road.
How did the connection happen, Owen?
I kind of forget. Like, I think I contacted Colin. We had some mutual friends. Like, I know Rob Britton. Rob Britton put in a good word for me, which I really helped a lot. But yeah, I think it was just kind of friends and friends, and we follow all the same people.
Happen that way.
Yeah, I can't really remember exactly how, but yeah, and then he's like, hey, we've got this program starting and we would love to have you as a part of it. And, like went through that kind of application process, and it was great because I was like, okay, like if I'm going to be open about my story, I want it to mean something. Mm-hmm. Like I want it to actually help people and mean something, instead of just like me telling my story and then it just kind of fading. Like I wanted it to do some good for people. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is exactly the boost that I need to tell my story and to have the support and to show that, cycling can be a great tool for recovery. And so, like linking up with Griffin and Cullen Easter was perfect. And like, I think what they're doing is so unique, and it's still kind of in its infancy, but I think it's going to grow really, really big, because you don't see a lot of what they're doing out there in the world, right? And
no, you don't.
It has, like, for people like me, like, it has such a place in cycling. Like, there are so many people that I know that are in recovery, that traditional forms of recovery doesn't work for them, like the AA, the NA, these kind of treatment programs that have, that are basically based out of like 1950s. And using the same kind of model that they have for friggin' 80 years. It's not going to suit.
It's not worked.
Yeah, it's
in
not.
So many ways.
Yeah, so, I think people are really looking outside of those traditional forms of recovery to find what's going to work for them. And I think endurance sports and cycling, for me, or cycling specifically, is really, really good form of recovery. And I think that if we can get the word out there and show that this is something that really works, and there are other people, like-minded people, that are, not just cycling, but, like if you want to get to a high level and race, that's an opportunity for you. Or if you want to just find a good group to ride with, good community to ride with, that's there too. Or if you just want to go and get a bike and ride up the mountain solo, that's all there. So there's a lot of those options that are available, right? And it's just about trying to show that, like, look, foundations like Opicure, like there's people out there that will support your journey. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And then I guess people see the jersey, you guys racing, obviously so inspiring to see what you do. And then maybe people will be able to reach out and understand your journeys. And
I think for people like myself, Griffin and Cullen, like, Cullen, dude, watch out for this guy next year. He's moved to LA. He's not going to be up in, 3 feet of snow over the winter.
Yeah, he was in Utah, right? Was
Yeah,
it Utah?
so now he's in LA, and he's going to get a nice base through the winter, and he works like a maniac, and he works in the air. But yeah, watch out for him next year. He's going to be.
Yeah, shout out to him.
He's like racing with him in Kansas. I was like, man, it's like both of those guys are so fast and they're so strong. But yeah, those two brothers, the Easter brothers, watch out for them next year. But yeah, I think like they have both worked in the industry, and they both have been affected by addiction and opioid misuse, with a family member of theirs being affected and passing away. So I think that that's also a really good thing to have, as well as not necessarily just ex-addicts themselves, but people who have been affected by opioid misuse. Like, so you have the support of not just like, so for me, Griffin and Colin, it's like, Colin still kind of works in the industry. Like, they've been affected by opioid misuse. And then myself, having been through it, like, I think for Opicure, that's a great little team of guys, because you've got people who are not ex-addicts, you've got the ex-addict, you've got people who have been affected by it, and they're all there to support someone new in recovery.
Absolutely.
Right?
You chat with them for 5-10 minutes. I mean, I got a really good chance to chat, I believe, with Colin at BWRBC, very complimentary of British Columbia, but he knows what's going on. He knows what's working in his respective area in Utah. And like, we had a great chat about BC and like things that are not working here and things that need to change. And so I took him
so down
with it, right?
Yeah, I took him for a little walk down on the downtown east side, and he was just like, "Holy shit, man!" And I was like, "Yeah, man, that's where I spent my time." And him and Griffin are so genuine about what they want to achieve. I don't think I would have been as motivated to tell my story if it wasn't for the support of those two and Opicure Foundation. Like, I think that being a part of that has really kind of given me more confidence to tell my story.
It's fantastic and something people should definitely check out if you haven't checked it out.
Definitely, go check out or donate or whatever, because I think that what they're doing is incredible. And
I haven't seen it. I work in nonprofit and charities. It's kind of it's wild. So
you get some kind of like cycling recovery groups, but nothing to the level of Opicure, right?
No,
like,
not at the level you guys are also performing at. I would argue.
Because we want to race and we want to get results. Right?
Exactly, and
show what's, and that's a part of it, and showing what's capable for people who have been affected.
Talk to me about working with the feed, because for me, as someone who was working on gravel racing last year, that was kind of an amazing sponsor in my eyes to have, because you get all the knowledge and all the nutrition. What was it like to have like dialed in nutrition every time?
Yeah, it's great. Like, you really get an opportunity to find what works for you. They have everything.
They do.
They literally have everything. Like, I don't want to make this a massive just advertisement for them, but it's pretty.
But it's very intimidating. I go on their website and I like put a bunch of stuff in the cart, and then I get overwhelmed and I leave it because I'm like, I can't.
When you're connected with them, and you can do, and everybody can do this, is that they send out emails that are kind of specific to what your focuses are. Mm-hmm. So they have coaches, right? And they also have all products that will help for your, like, whether it's running, triathlon, cycling, gravel racing. I really got to kind of dial in and find out what works for me and what works for my gut and what's going to help me.
Absolutely. You chatted with me a bunch, I remember, last year before I started, I'd say, like an aggressive race season for me personally, and that helped a ton. What's the advice you'd give to people who are signing up for BWR? First BWR, first Unbound, okay, they got the training dialed, but from a nutrition standpoint, because in my books, that made the biggest difference.
Well, when you sign up, start eating now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, start going out on your bike, and because you really have to train the gut to be able to to withstand 100 plus carbs an hour. Like, you can't just kind of go out on your training rides and have your drink mix and have a couple bars or gels and do your regular training.
Yeah,
you really have to train your gut to be able to handle that, and I think that's why I've been lucky to have a nutrition sponsors, because, you're going to have to find out what works. Like, so I've been able to find different options from different brands and find out, okay, like I can stomach these brands for 120 grams an hour, but I can't stomach these brands. Like I can
Yes.
stomach this, but I can't stomach that. So my advice would just go out and like eat as much as you can of what you think is going to work best for you, and just kind of find that balance of like, okay, this tastes good, and I can actually slam in 100 plus grams of carbs of this an hour for
While riding a bike.
yeah,
While riding your bike.
for 6 plus hours, and it's not going to give me gut rot or upset my stomach. So I think my advice was just, yeah, spend a month to 2 months ahead of time.
And you have to practice it. I
Oh,
think
yeah, and you have
that
to be
is the
diligent.
big thing is like people do not do any of it in training, and then they show up to a race with like all the gels,
Yeah.
all the good nutrition, and then it's
Yeah,
you're
and then
starting
their
to
gut
implode.
can't handle it.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's like anything, right? It's like if you're fasting for a day and then you eat a massive turkey dinner, it's gonna like fuck shit up.
Are you
right?
fully liquid diet now for a race? Well, generally.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It depends on like Unbound and like the longer ones. I'll start off with some bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But pretty much just gels and liquid carbs and electrolytes and stuff.
So you did really well last year with BWR as far as results were concerned. I think you were like up there with Masters.
Yep.
Tell me about your toughest moment through the BWR racing this time, and
Yeah.
your best moment.
I actually won the quadruple crown for the Masters, but it was weird. Like I didn't have the best of luck at those events.
Yeah.
The best one I had was Kansas. Everything went great. But BWR Canada, I had a mechanical early on that kind of set me on the chase early. Had some issues in California that.
How do you keep calm when that stuff happens? Like
'Cause you know that.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I was having my best race, last race of the year. It was unbelievable to me. I was like right at the end and like had a mechanical, and I had to really talk myself down, and that's something weird for me because I'm a pretty calm person. But
Yeah, you are.
you get to the
definitely
last race, best result, you can see it, and then for the first time your bike fucks up and you're done.
I think it's like anything. It's like unlike on the road, it's like if you're on the road racing and you have some of those mechanicals, your race is done. But sometimes it's not. Like sometimes on the road you can get back from, like a drop chain or something like that. And I think I've been able to kind of not panic in those times. Like at BWR here in Canada, I kind of did panic a little bit, just because where it was like, it was at such an inopportune time. I knew I was going to be like way behind in the single track sections. And I was like, okay, well, it's a long race, you know what I mean? And I think the more calm you stay, the quicker you can get it done.
Yeah.
And then just put your head down and it's just about trying to stay calm and not get too in your head. But everybody's always going to panic a little bit but then you also have to think, okay, well, this is gravel racing. Like, I think what helps too is like, okay, someone else has probably gone through this as well. Like, other people are going through this. So, I'm not the only one that's, punctured. I'm not the only one that's had this mechanical.
Yeah.
So, it's just about putting your head down and getting on with it, I think.
No, that's a good mental state. And you know what? My advice also from last season was practice it at home. If you don't practice fixing a chain when one link like snaps or one link bends, you're not going to be able to do it when you're, 128 BPM and you're like freaking out.
Yeah.
So like practice it.
Well, practice it and then have everything readily available.
Yeah.
Don't have it tucked away in a saddlebag at the bottom. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
Have your quick links like taped to your top tube, or have your plugs readily available, and that's really shaves off so much time. And like if you have everything super readily available, like if you have to go take your saddlebag off, unzip it, start digging in,
And
that's
you've
when
never
people panic.
You've never done it before, right?
Yeah, that's when people panic. But if you've done it before and you have it readily available, it's pretty seamless. And I think that helps the confidence in kind of being like, okay, I can handle these mishaps and not lose a whole bunch of time.
So, Canadian racing scene for gravel anyway, we're seeing it blow up. Do you want to see other things happen in the scene that's not happening right now?
Yeah, I want to see Jody Krotz, the woman who does the Penticton Fondo.
Yeah, and she did Okanagan Graveler.
Yeah, and that happened. I'd love to see more events like that. That was a 200-kilometer, super hard, proper gravel event, and like Ian Boswell, he ended up winning it. And yeah, it was a tough day, and I think that there was
the worst day I've ever had on a bike.
Oh yeah,
it was
gnarly, but it was fun because it was a proper gravel race, right? Like it was, to me, I think it was, it's the 100 to 140 kilometer ones are fun, what I mean? Like I've done some of those, and I've gotten some podiums and I've gotten some good results. The shorter ones, like battling out with some local guys, like with the Sea to Sky Fondo and the Kettle
those
Metal.
are great events.
And those are
when you're
great
starting
events.
out, like
perfect. Those are great events.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd like to see, like we're lucky that in Blue Mountain, like we have the UCI gravel, and but I would like to see a big, because we have so much great terrain. So, like did you do Trans Rockies?
I tried to, and then unfortunately it was on fire last year. So
that's
this
right.
year,
yeah, I did it
Trans
last year,
Rockies.
and it was great. Like they were long, hard days, 4 days. Camping, and there's so much good terrain that we have out in BC, and other provinces as well. So I'd like to see an event take advantage of all of that, like kind of Trans Rockies does, but in like a big, long gravel event.
I'm surprised no one's done it in Clinton.
Like you look at the turnout that BWR Canada had last year,
just crazy.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think because you not only do you have the gravel pros and the racers that want to have a great result because it's a big event, but you also have the guys that because there's a lot of gravel riders here in BC, and I think there's a lot of guys that are getting into it, and I think for them it would just be like a great challenge to be able to be like, okay, well, I can do 250 kilometers of gravel, I can do 200-kilometer gravel race, and so you're getting these people to just accomplish it. So I think that's what I like to see about these big, long gravel events, is because Unbound, you've got the people that want to race and perform and get a good result, but then you also have a whole bunch of people that are like, this is going to be the longest event of their life. This is going to be the longest ride of their life. And there's a whole big contingent of people that want to go just to challenge themselves and tick that goal off.
Yeah, I don't care how experienced you are as a cyclist. Finishing those events is always an amazing feeling. It's always a journey. Nate always laughs at me and is the first person to comment on Strava and say this is your longest event ever ridden on Strava, and it's every time it's some gravel event that it's my longest ride ever. Yeah. No, it's huge. It's an amazing medium in gravel. So I'm so glad I've seen it prosper. I want to get to this before we end, Owen, because I think it's fascinating. Talk to me about Lifetime Grand Prix. Do you want to be part of Lifetime Grand Prix if they sent you an invite? Hey, Owen, you're part of it. Because I've heard mixed reviews, right? Like you hear from athletes, I've put a shit ton of money in it. I'll never recover from this. Unintended almost.
Well, the application process is weird. So it's, the good thing is that they do look at results a lot, right? So I think that Jeff Kabush, the first year that it happened, Kabush got denied, and I was like, what? That's crazy. This is an Olympic mountain biker who would be amazing, and he had a few good things to say and a few controversial things to say, but I think he had a few good points. Is that there's the first few were it was very media based, do you have a huge social media following, we need you in this Grand Prix. But now it's about the athletics, and now it's about, the events and I think that now I think it's great opportunity for people that maybe haven't gotten their name recognized. Like, obviously there's going to be the same like top 10, 20 people's names on there that you see every year.
Yeah.
But then you're going to get new names on there every year that, so it will be able to give them recognition and be able to boost their sponsorship model. They'll be able to boost their careers, boost them. But I think it's its own thing in the US, which is great. I think it's
do we need something like that in Canada?
Not yet. I don't
Not
think
yet.
So.
We don't have it.
Yeah, Lifetime, there's so many other really, really amazing events outside the Lifetime events. And I think that the Lifetime Grand Prix has kind of put a little bit more focus on the Lifetime events and less focus on some of these other really, really good events that maybe won't be targeted by these big names because they're in the Lifetime, right? So the big names that want to get that payday, because, let's face it, like the Lifetime Grand Prix has a pretty good payday.
It does, yeah.
So, like the big names that want to focus on that are going to focus on all the Lifetime events and maybe not put as much focus into some of these other events that are amazing and deserve to have these big names there. I think Adam Roberge has been a really good person to kind of balance those, like with the Lifetime and other events. So I think that's a good example of, somebody who's been able to kind of balance both.
Will we see Owen do Lifetime? No. You don't want to get on a mountain bike and like.
Well, yeah, it is. I suck on a mountain bike, man. But no, I don't.
No, that's fair. I asked because
too old. I'm too old, and there's a lot of other things I think I want to experience. Right?
That's beautiful, right? Like, there's so many cool races out there. Like Migration Race is one that I look at and one day we'll do. Or
I think if Lifetime was an option, it would be great to experience it for a year, but I think there's a lot of other events that I would love to experience. Like you said, the Migration Race would be something incredible to experience.
Yeah, just ludicrous. It's
kind of like Transcordilleras is the same type of thing. It's like, I'd love to try to go more overseas, and like that's why Gravel Worlds would be great. Just get over to Europe and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Like my dream is riding my gravel bike across India. That would be my dream.
Oh, man.
Like, I think
amazing.
As I get older too, I'm way more interested in doing things like that. Racing's fun, but to do epic things for your soul is kind of
and I think it shows a lot now too, with people moving more into ultra, and I think I'll probably end up doing that too. Is like I don't know what year it will be realistic, but I still want to do Tour Divide. Mm-hmm. Right, like my friend and I were thinking about 25, 26.
For people who don't know, what are the stats on Tour Divide?
Well, Lachlan has the unofficial.
Yes, the unofficial.
Record. Yeah. But it's from Banff to the Mexico border in New Mexico. So he did it in like 2 weeks. But I would just do it as like a bike packing trip and
have a life-changing experience.
Yeah, just ride as hard as you can for 12 to 14 hours, sun up to sundown, and then none of this, no sleeping for 3 days, stuff like that is tough.
That's
that's something like Tour Divide would be great, but I'd like to try to do a couple non-stops, like maybe next year do the Transcordilleras non-stop first and try to see dabble your foot into the ultra. You can't just jump into something like Tour Divide and
No, you can't. No, you can't. It's baby steps, but you can get there. And I think for people who are looking into getting into these events, like, do it. Yeah. Sign up, then freak out, and then train. And you will get there, and you'll go through dark times, but you'll get to the finish line. Or maybe you won't get to the finish line, but you'll still have this outstanding memory, I will say.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the great thing about, like, for me, with these gravel events and gravel in general, is the views and the places that it takes you is incredible. Like, outside of gravel, I would have never been able to see some of the places I've seen. Like just some of these incredible like oil painting style views of like just nothing anywhere for miles, and you're like, wow, like if it wasn't for this gravel bike, I would not have been out in the middle of nowhere on this dirt road in wherever
Colombia,
you are.
and like
Colombia. Or
I have a funny story, and it was prompted by, so I showed your film, our proof of concept film at work at St. Paul's, and my foundation folks, the person who hired me said, you know what, Jamshed, I get it when I asked you that question about stress. So they asked me in my job interview, how do you deal with stress, Jamshed? Like, how would you deal with that? What are your coping mechanisms? And I simply said, I race gravel bikes. Mm-hmm. That is extremely stressful. And like, I explained what it is, and they didn't really quite get it, but they saw your film. They're like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have no issue dealing with stress.
Yeah. Yeah. Pile all of that into the bike, right? Like, and that's the great thing is like, you get the rewards, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah, it is stressful being in some of these events, but at the same time, like, just out there on the bike, like you get these rewards of like, yeah, I can put all of my energy and focus and all of my stress and my hurt and my emotions and everything into the pedals. Mm-hmm. I can train hard. But then, yeah, you get to like the top of a mountain with these epic views, and it's kind of that payoff, and all of that stress is...
I know we're like basically out of time, but I want to ask you one more thing because it's so interesting to me, because I get so much love and support from my wife in what I do. I couldn't do it without her. What's your partner's relationship with what you do, and what do you get from that, and what is that like? Just some insight.
Yeah, number one, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am without her.
Yeah,
for sure. 100%. If it wasn't for her, I would not be anywhere near where I am. I get such great support from her, and she works her ass off. So she works full time working with children in the downtown east side.
Wow.
And she's going to school. So right now is actually kind of a perfect time, because there's days where she needs to study, and she's like, "Okay, Owen, you need to do your like 6-hour ride today because I need to have the house to myself to focus and study."
Yeah.
So, like, and she doesn't ride her bike. Like, she commutes and she rides around for fun, but like, she's not a cyclist. And so I think that's almost a good thing as well. So, yeah, like with her, I get some of the best support I've ever had in my life. And yeah, that's why I married her. But also is she understands that for me to be who I am is like, whether I'm racing or just riding, is that I need this in my life, and she supports that, and she understands that, yeah, like, because for me, it's also not just, racing, riding, responsibilities with sponsors and all of that stuff, is that it's also my form of recovery as well, and she understands that, and she's seen my journey, and she's supported that 100%, so I couldn't have done it without her.
Yeah,
sure.
It's as cheesy as it says. There are super domestiques in so many ways. So
yeah, and a partner is one of them. Yeah, to have a support, and like we touched on before, is cycling is so selfish.
It
right?
is,
and it's time selfish, right? Like it's spending time away from your partner, right? And understanding, okay, well, now I need to spend more time with my partner when I have. So it's like when you have those times with your partner, you cherish, the trips that you have together, or the
moments,
dinners. You make more effort into
yeah.
trying to repay the fact that, okay, I've just done a 6-hour ride and then napped for an hour and completely disregarded you all day. So now we need to...
No, it's classic. I mean, my wife and I were having a conversation, I think last week. She said, we need to have a sunny day where you don't go ride your bike.
What?
I know. It's crazy. But good advice for everyone out there. If it's a sunny, beautiful day, choose that day. Don't ride your bike. Go spend it with your partner. Hey,
yeah,
do it for them.
For sure.
Owen, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I truly, truly, truly appreciate it. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to, I think, the show. So we'll do a little fist bump and wish you the best. 2024 will be amazing. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah, and check out, what we're doing and Opicure and watch
Absolutely. What's the best way to check out what you're doing? Instagram is kind of the best
Instagram. Format? Yeah, Instagram. And, I think I'm going to be trying to work a lot more in the recovery scene with locally with, some treatment centers and stuff like that. And yeah, follow Opicure as well. See what we're doing. Be
Perfect.
Great.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Owen.
Okay.
Truly appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out the Super Domestique podcast. Follow us on Instagram or find us at thelastdrop.cc to learn more.